Okay, this is part 3. I'm reading an article on the Washington Post. The Washington Post is talking about how the Obama campaign in 2012 used Facebook and apparently Google, as we see. We knew that also. Continuing. Dan Wagner had come to the DNC after the 2008 election to expand what was initially a tiny analytics operation. In early 2010, others on the Obama team had an epiphany about the value of analytics. It came just before the special election to fill the Senate seat of the late Edward M. Kennedy in Massachusetts. And we all just loved him. Many Democrats were still in denial about the direction of the race. I know where it went. Incredulous that a little-known Republican state senator named Scott Brown could have enough momentum to defeat Democratic State Attorney General Martha Coakley. Wagner, who was operating with the analytics team out of the DNC, analyzed the numbers and surmised that Brown would win. He delivered his conclusions in the data to Messina. He said, "We're going to lose, and here's why we're going to lose." And it happened almost exactly like that, Messina said. That's when we first started saying this modeling can really be something. See, they know when they have an opportunity to win, and they know when they're going to lose. But when they report it and they use these polls, they skew these polls deliberately. And the more that are for, the more they know that the Republican is winning, they skew more towards Democrats and independents that lean middle to left. And thus they come out with 15, 20-point leads for their candidates, knowing full well that they don't really have the leads. But they think we don't know. So, Dillon and National Field Director Jeremy Bird brought Wagner to the re-election campaign. Eventually, the team modeled practically everything: voters, states, volunteers, donors, anything it could think of to improve efficiency, to give it greater confidence in its decision making. It wanted to know who was most likely to serve as a volunteer, and it created a model to find out. There are a lot of sheep out there. Not as many as they think, but there are a lot out there. The campaign established record numbers of offices in the states and record numbers of staging areas for volunteers, based in part on analysis of how much more likely people were to volunteer if they were close to an office. "We built a model on volunteer likelihood," Stewart said. "We built a model on turnout. We built a model on support. We built a model on persuasion. Who's most persuadable? Persuasion." And if we can't persuade you, we'll just off you. From modeling and testing, the campaign we'll shut your voice off, and eventually they want to off you. But from modeling and testing, the campaign refined voter outreach. Virtually every email it sent included a test of some sort. The subject line, the appeal, the message designed to maximize contributions, volunteer hours, and eventually turnout on election day. The campaign would break out 18 smaller groups from email lists, create 18 versions of an email, and then watch the response rate for an hour and go with the winner. Or take a combination of subject line and message from different emails and turn them into the finished product. Big corporations had used such testing for years, but political campaigns had not. The team's attention to detail rivaled that of the most successful corporations. One innovation was the recruitment of corporate trainers or coaches who volunteered to help teach everyone how to manage. We recruited a whole group of pro bono executive coaches, Bird said. These are people that coach Fortune 100 companies. Obama's team recruited them as volunteers, but instead of having them knock on doors, they were asked to provide management training. We had them partner up with our state leadership, Bird said. They didn't need to know anything about campaigns because we didn't want their advice on how to run a campaign. We wanted their advice on how to be a manager. The campaign also sought advice from what the New York Times later called the dream team of academics who described themselves as a consortium of behavioral scientists. The group included political scientists, psychologists, and behavioral economists. The campaign was operating well outside the traditional network of political consultants. You can tell I'm getting tired of talking here. This is long. Throughout 2011, Obama advisors were baffled by the slow start to the Republican presidential race. They knew from their experience in 2008 how long it took to build a field operation capable of winning or stealing a campaign. Well, the stealing comes beyond this. They were even more keenly aware of the lead times and money required to assemble the technological infrastructure to support a sophisticated get-out-the-vote operation for 2012. Republicans could see that the Obama campaign was spending tens of millions of dollars in 2011. They just weren't sure on what. Money doesn't really matter in the end, as Trump proved. Check the time here. The gap between the Obama and Romney operations crystallized in the key battleground state of Ohio. In the closing weeks of the general election campaign, members of Obama's team had been on the ground in Ohio for years. They knew the state intimately. Obama had at least 130 offices there. It's one of the states that there was a lot of election fraud. Plus 500 or so staging areas for volunteers. He had almost 700 staffers on the Ohio payroll alone. Thousands of volunteers contacted voters. Romney had to put together an organization in a matter of months. He had about 40 offices and 157 paid staff members, although most of them were on the Republican National Committee's payroll. Scott Jennings, Romney's Ohio state director, said after the election that there was no way the Republicans could conquer Obama's head start. He knows what the hell happened there. He's just not going to say it. Our ground game was as good as it could have possibly been, given the time and resources we had to work with. Excuses, he said. There's just no substitute for time. 6 months wasn't enough to overcome 6 years of a constant campaign run by the other side. Truly, it is remarkable to see what they did in the rearview mirror. No, Romney was just a douche. He was the mirror, the blueprint for Obamacare. So that's one of the reasons he didn't get the turnout and we didn't overturn the fraud. Trump won by much more than what he actually got in what was shown in the popular vote. He won by much more than that. Okay. I'm going to stop here and go to another section.